All right, so you hop on the London Underground, right? You're trying to figure out how to get from, I don't know, let's say Piccadilly Circus to Camden Town.
Okay.
And you pull out that iconic tube map.
Right.
You know, the one, all colorful lines, neat angles.
Yep.
You probably don't even think twice about it, right? It just makes sense.
Right.
But, you know, it wasn't always this way.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, before 1933, before this map, you had been looking at something a lot more, well, geographically accurate, like superimposed on actual street layouts.
Oh, wow. I can imagine that being a nightmare, especially underground.
Oh, absolutely. Trying to make sense of that, especially down in those tunnels. All those lines jumbled together. Forget about it.
And actually, today, we're going to be talking all about the guy who changed that, Harry Beck, and his revolutionary map.
Absolutely. He wasn't a cartographer.
Yeah.
He was a technical draftsman. And that actually turned out to be a huge advantage.
Interesting. So you're saying like his background in technical drawing, is that what made the difference?
Big time. His work, well, he worked for the signals office back then, dealing with circuit diagrams all day.
So he was used to simplifying like complex systems into these diagrams?
Exactly. And he realized that passengers, they don't really need to know the exact distances between stations.
Right. It's just the order of the station's connections, right?
Precisely. The sequence, where to change lines. And that's exactly what his map shows, and so clearly.
It's fascinating, right? Like, this seemingly simple design had such a huge impact on how people navigate London and actually beyond.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Beck's influence is everywhere, Anytime you see a transit map that prioritizes clarity over strict geographical accuracy, you're seeing his legacy.
Well, on that note, let's dive into Harry Beck's story and how his map came to be, shall we?
Sounds good. Let's go.
So first off, who is Harry Beck? Where did he come from?
Well, Harry Beck, his full name was Henry Charles Beck, born in Leighton, England, back in 1902.
Okay.
Pretty ordinary upbringing, I'd say. Nothing, nothing too out of the ordinary. But he was always fascinated by maps and diagrams.
Got it.
Now, this is in the early 20th century. A time of great technological advancement, particularly in transportation.
Of course, the London Underground was expanding rapidly during that time, right?
Right, exactly. And Beck, he ends up getting a job as an engineering draftsman for the London Underground Signals Office in the 1920s.
So that's where his experience with those technical diagrams, the circuit diagrams, comes in.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's really crucial for understanding his approach to the tube map.
So he's working with these electrical systems day in and day out. How does that then translate to him reimagining a transit map?
Well, think about it. In a circuit diagram, the actual physical distance between the components, it's not really important, is it? It's more about the connections, the flow of electricity.
You're just trying to see how things are linked together, right?
Exactly. And Beck realized that the same principle could be applied to the tube map, that passengers, they don't necessarily care about the precise geographic location of each station.
Right. They just need to know how to get from point A to point B,
Yeah.
the order of the stations, the interchanges.
Precisely. And this realization was actually kind of revolutionary at the time.
Yeah.
Because, back then, maps, they were all about geographical accuracy.
Yeah, it was like, stick to the real world as closely as possible.
Exactly, yeah.
So Beck, he's thinking outside the box, right?
He was way ahead of his time in that sense. Now, in 1931, Beck, unfortunately, gets laid off from his job at the signals office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, bit of a setback. But this actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, because now he had time to develop this idea, right?
Exactly. During his unemployment, Beck actually starts working on his own version of the tube map.
And so what did this first version of the map look like?
So it was quite different from the maps that people were used to at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of trying to show the exact geographical locations of the stations, he simplified the lines, used straight lines and 45-degree angles.
Kind of like those circuit diagrams he was so used to working with.
Absolutely, yeah. And he also introduced color coding for each line, which made it much easier to follow your route.
That's so smart. So you can just trace your line with your eyes.
Exactly. And it was really a radical departure from convention.
But it makes so much sense, right? Like when you're underground, you don't need to know the exact twists and turns of the tunnels, just the stations and the connections.
Exactly, exactly. Now, there's some debate about whether Beck was actually inspired by earlier linear diagrams that were appearing inside the trains.
Oh, you mean those diagrams that just showed the stations in a straight line along a single route?
Right, exactly. Those were they were already a step towards simplifying things.
Kind of like a proto-Beck map in a way?
Yeah, you could say that they were focused on showing the sequence of stations rather than the precise geography.
So maybe seeing those planted a seed in his mind, like, hey, we can do this for the whole network.
It's definitely possible.
Interesting. So Beck, he finishes this first version of his map. What happens next? Does he just like walk into London Underground headquarters and say, "Hey, I've got something amazing for you"?
Well, pretty much, yeah. He submits his idea to Frank Pick, who was the managing director of London Underground at the time.
Okay.
Now, Pick, he was a visionary, a big believer in good design and its power to improve the passenger experience.
So he must have loved Beck's idea immediately, right?
Well, you would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But actually, the publicity department, they initially rejected Beck's map.
No way. Why? It's so much clearer than those old maps.
I know, right? But they felt it was too radical a departure from traditional cartography.
They were probably like, "Where's the Thames? Why are the lines all straight?"
Exactly. They thought it would confuse passengers.
But Beck, he doesn't give up, does he?
Oh, absolutely not. He's convinced that his map is better, more user-friendly.
So what does he do?
So he persists, refines his design a bit, and eventually, in 1932, they agree to do a small trial run.
Okay, so they're finally giving him a chance.
Yeah. They print 500 copies of the map and distribute them at a few select stations.
All right, and what do people think?
Well, the response is overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
Passengers, they love it. They find it so much easier to understand and navigate the network.
Finally, right. A map that actually helps you get around.
Exactly. And so this trial run, it basically proves that Beck was right all along.
His focus on clarity, on user experience, it paid off.
It did. Big time. And so in January 1933, the map is officially published as a pocket edition, so you could carry it around easily.
Convenient.
And they printed 700,000 copies initially.
Wow, so they really went all in.
They did, and it was an instant success. I mean, they had to do a large reprint after just 1 month.
That's incredible. So Beck's map, it just completely took off.
It did. It revolutionized the way people navigated the London Underground, and it's been the basis for the tube map ever since.
And it's not just London, right? Like his design, it's influenced transit maps all over the world.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, Beck's approach, it really changed the way we think about map making, especially for transit systems.
So let's break down what makes Beck's map so effective. What are those key design principles that we were talking about earlier?
Okay, so first and foremost, there's the shift from geographical accuracy to topological representation.
Okay, so remind me again, what does that mean exactly?
So a geographically accurate map, it shows you the exact distances, the curves, the lines, all that.
Right, like a traditional map?
Yeah, exactly. But a topological map like Beck's, it focuses on the connections, the relationships between the stations.
So it's more about the order of the stations, the interchanges, rather than their exact positions.
Precisely. And this makes it much easier to understand, especially when you're underground and you don't really have, any visual references to the outside world.
You just need to know which station comes after which and where to switch lines.
Exactly. And then there's the color coding for each line.
Oh, yeah. That's such a simple but brilliant idea.
It is, right. It makes it so much easier to follow your route visually.
Just trace that colored line with your finger.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the use of straight lines and 45-degree angles, which we mentioned earlier.
Right. That gives it that really distinctive look.
It does. And it's not just about aesthetics. It's also about clarity, reducing visual clutter.
Makes it easier to process the information.
Exactly. Now, Beck, he also used a grid system to organize the map.
Okay, so like a framework that everything is laid out on.
Yeah, and this helped to create a sense of order and visual harmony.
So it's not just a random jumble of lines and stations. There's a structure to it.
Right, exactly. And it also made it easier to add new lines and stations in the future.
So the map could evolve along with the underground itself.
Exactly. Now, it's worth mentioning that Beck, he didn't completely ignore geography.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He did take into account the relative positions of the stations to some extent.
So it's not like he just threw geography out the window completely.
No. But he didn't let it dictate the design of the map.
He prioritized clarity, user experience.
Exactly. And then there's that expansion of the central area, which we talked about earlier, that was actually something that F.H. Dingemore had done in his 1932 map.
Right, making the central part of the map more readable.
Exactly. Yeah. And it seems likely that Beck, he incorporated that idea into his design.
So he was building on previous efforts to improve the map?
Exactly. And it shows that he was really paying attention to what works, what didn't work.
He was focused on making the map as useful as possible for passengers.
Absolutely. And it's really a testament to his genius that his design has stood the test of time.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Almost 100 years later, we're still using a map based on his principles.
That's pretty incredible.
It is. Now, beyond the tube map, Beck, he also applied his approach to other transport systems, didn't he?
He did. In fact, in 1938, he created a diagram of the entire London region's rail system, which included, both the underground and mainline services.
Oh, wow. So he was thinking even bigger, broader.
He was. Now, this diagram, it wasn't actually published at the time.
Oh, why not?
It's not entirely clear, but it did eventually appear in a book, Ken Garland's book, in 1994.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it really shows Beck's ambition to kind of extend his principles to even more complex networks.
So he wasn't content with just conquering the tube map. He wanted to simplify all of London's transport.
It seems that way, yeah. And he also produced at least one map for British railways, specifically the Eastern Region suburban lines.
Okay, so his influence is spreading beyond the underground.
It is, and this is something that's not as widely known, but Beck, he also designed at least two versions of a diagram for the Paris Metro.
The Paris Metro, that's fascinating.
Yeah, he was never actually commissioned for the project, but it shows his interest in applying his design philosophy to other urban transit systems.
So he wasn't just like a London underground guy. He was thinking about these problems more broadly.
He was, yeah. He was really a pioneer in the field of transit map design.
So Beck, he creates this iconic map. It's a huge success, revolutionizes how people get around London. But what about the recognition he received during his lifetime?
Well, that's a bit of a tricky one.
Oh, how so?
Well, the accounts are somewhat conflicting. Some sources, they suggest that Beck, he wasn't actually formally commissioned for his initial design,
He just kind of did it on his own time.
Yeah, and that he might not have even been paid for it. Or maybe he received a very small fee, like a few guineas.
Really? So he created this groundbreaking design, and he might not have even been properly compensated for it.
It seems that way, yeah. And there wasn't really any widespread recognition of his work, at least not initially.
Wow, that's kind of a shame, isn't it?
It is. But in the years since, his importance has been widely acknowledged.
So he did eventually get the recognition he deserved.
He did, yeah. I mean, since 1997, there's been a statement acknowledging his original 1931 design printed on every London Underground map.
So every time you pick up one of those maps, you're seeing a tribute to Harry Beck.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been recognized as a design icon,
Well, he definitely earned that title.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a Beck Gallery at the London Transport Museum.
Oh, cool. So people can go and learn about his work, his life.
They can, yeah.
Yeah.
And there are commemorative plaques at Finchley Central Underground Station and at his birthplace in Leighton.
So he's really become this celebrated figure in London's history.
He has, yeah. I mean, his tube map, it was voted the second favorite British design of the 20th century in the 2006 Great British Design Quest.
Wow, second only to Concorde.
That's right.
That's pretty impressive company.
It is. And there have been more recent tributes as well, like GB Rail Freight named a locomotive after him in 2007.
Really?
Yeah. And the Royal Mail, they featured his map on a postage stamp in 2009.
So he's gone from maybe not getting paid for his design to being on a postage stamp.
It's quite a journey, isn't it?
It really is. And there's even a play about him, right?
Yeah. The Truth About Harry Beck, it premiered in 2021.
So his story is still captivating people all these years later.
Absolutely.
It's just amazing to think about the impact that one person with his, his unique way of thinking can have on the world.
It is. And it's a reminder that good design, it's not just about aesthetics. It's about solving problems, making things better for people.
And in Beck's case, it was about making it easier for millions of people to navigate a complex and often confusing system.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Harry Beck and his revolutionary tube map, I want you to think about this. Beck's principles of simplification and clarity, They're not just relevant to transit maps. They
Right.
can be applied to so many other things like software interfaces, organizational charts, anything that's complex and could benefit from being made more user-friendly.
Absolutely. I mean, think about all the times you've encountered a website or a forum that's just like impossible to navigate, you know?
I know those all too well.
Exactly. And it's like, why can't this be simpler, clear, more like a Beck map?
Right. And so maybe that's the real legacy of Harry Beck. Not just the tube map itself, but the idea that we can and we should strive to make complex systems more understandable, more accessible for everyone.
I think that's a great way to put it.
So the next time you're looking at a complicated diagram or a confusing website, think of Harry Beck and his tube map and ask yourself, could this be better? Could this be simpler? Could this be more user-friendly?
That's a great takeaway. Always room for improvement, right?
Absolutely. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this depth dive into the world of Harry Beck and the London Underground tube map. Until next time, happy navigating.
See them?